There is someone in your life who drains you, and you cannot always explain why. They do not scream, they do not always insult you directly, but after every interaction, you feel smaller, you feel confused, slightly off balance, like the ground shifted and only you noticed. Here is what nobody tells you. The reason it is so hard to deal with them is not weakness on your part. It is because your brain is working against you. And today, that changes. Let us start with the experience itself. You know this feeling. You walk into a room and they are there. Before they even speak, something in you tightens. Your thoughts become quieter, your sentences shorter. You start monitoring yourself, measuring your words before you say them. And afterward, you replay the conversation for hours, wondering what you said wrong, wondering if you overreacted. That is not anxiety, that is a survival response. Toxic people, particularly those with narcissistic or manipulative tendencies, are extraordinarily skilled at one thing. They create unpredictability. And your brain, which is built to detect threats, cannot rest around unpredictability. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. Your nervous system goes into a low-grade alert state around certain people, not because you are fragile, but because your amygdala, the threat detection center of the brain, has learned to associate that person with danger. Even when the danger is emotional, not physical, the brain responds the same way. It floods your system with cortisol, it narrows your thinking, it makes you reactive, and reactive is exactly where they want you. But here's the reframe. You are not broken for struggling around them. You are human. Empathy, the very thing they seem to lack, is also the thing that makes you vulnerable to them. Research on dark triad personalities shows that people with high manipulation tendencies instinctively exploit emotional sensitivity. So if you feel things deeply, if you try to understand others, if you assume good intent, you are not naive. You are wired for connection in a world that sometimes punishes you for it. The goal is not to become cold, the goal is to become strategic. Now, let us talk about the mechanism. Why does the brain make it so hard to stay grounded around these people? There is a concept in neuroscience called emotional contagion. Your brain contains mirror neurons, cells that fire not just when you act, but when you observe others. This is how you feel nervous watching someone else give a speech. It is also how a chaotic, angry, or emotionally unstable person can transfer their inner state directly into your nervous system, without a word, without a scene, just by being in the room. Think of it like this. Imagine your emotional state is a lake, calm, clear, still. A toxic person is like a stone dropped into your lake without warning. Ripples move outward, your stillness disappears, and the mistake most people make is trying to stop the ripples, arguing, explaining, defending. The real strategy is to make the lake deeper so the stone barely reaches the bottom. Here are 4 psychology-backed ways to do exactly that. The first is called the gray rock method. It comes from trauma psychology and manipulation research. The principle is simple. Become uninteresting. Toxic people, especially those with narcissistic traits, are motivated by reaction. Your frustration, your confusion, your visible pain, that's the reward. When you give flat, neutral, one-word responses, you remove the reward, not by fighting them, not by confronting them, but by giving them nothing to feed on. In behavioral psychology, this is called extinction. When a behavior produces no reward, the brain stops repeating it. A real-life example: your coworker constantly tries to provoke you with subtle digs in meetings. Instead of defending yourself or going quiet in obvious discomfort, you respond with a calm, short, factual reply. No heat, no edge, just neutral. Over time, they move on because you have become a gray rock, stable, unremarkable, unworthy of their effort. The second is learning to interrupt the emotional hijack. When your amygdala fires, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, goes partially offline. You literally cannot think clearly in that state. This is called amygdala hijack, a term coined by psychologist Daniel Goleman. The moment you feel that familiar tightening, that narrowing of thought, you need a pattern interrupt. The most effective one is slow, deliberate nasal breathing. Research shows that controlled breathing activates the vagus nerve, which signals the parasympathetic nervous system to calm the threat response. It sounds almost too simple, but 3 slow breaths before you respond is not a meditation exercise, it's neurological self-defense. Real example: your family member says something that feels like a personal attack at dinner. You feel the heat rise in your chest. You breathe slowly, once, twice, 3 times. Then you respond, or you say nothing. Either way, you chose. They didn't choose for you. The third is called cognitive diffusion, from acceptance and commitment therapy. When someone says something cruel or manipulative, your brain often treats it as truth. The thought lands, and your identity absorbs it. Cognitive diffusion teaches you to create distance between the statement and your sense of self. Instead of thinking, "They are right, I am difficult," you observe the thought from outside it. You say to yourself, "I notice they are trying to make me believe this." You don't argue with the thought, you don't accept it, you simply name what is happening. The brain responds differently to observation than to reaction. Observation keeps you in the prefrontal cortex. Reaction hands control back to them. The fourth and most powerful is boundary setting through behavior, not words. Most people think boundaries are statements. They are not. Statements can be ignored, argued with, manipulated around. Behavioral boundaries cannot. This is rooted in social learning theory by Albert Bandura. People learn what is acceptable through consequences, not words. When you consistently reduce access, limit time, end conversations quietly, and redirect energy elsewhere, you set a boundary the brain recognizes. A real-life example: your friend begins to gossip or play victim in a way that pulls you under. You quietly change the subject or end the call. You don't explain, you don't argue, you simply shift your behavior. Over time, the pattern changes, not because they became a better person, but because you stopped being available for the version of them that harmed you. Here is the one model that holds all of this together. Think of yourself as a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer only reads the temperature of the room. A thermostat regulates it. Most people around toxic individuals become thermometers. They reflect the chaos back. They absorb the heat. They react to every shift. The 4 principles above are how you become a thermostat. Gray rock removes the fuel. Breathing interrupts the hijack. Diffusion keeps your identity intact. Behavioral boundaries set the temperature of every relationship you're in. None of this requires confrontation. None of it requires saying a single word they didn't expect. You have probably spent a long time trying to understand them, trying to find the right thing to say, the right way to explain yourself. The truth is, the more you understand your own brain, the less power theirs has over you. You don't need to win an argument with them. You need to stop having the argument inside yourself. The quietest, most powerful thing you can do is simply become someone they can no longer reach. Not because you built a wall, but because you built a foundation.